After 15 years with TechVantage, I sat across from Marjorie Thompson as she spoke in that smooth, practiced corporate tone. "We're restructuring your position," she said, her voice carrying a trace of satisfaction she didn't bother to hide. Beside her sat Denise from HR, both of them wearing those polite, regretful smiles companies always use when they're about to let someone go. "The company is moving in a new direction," Denise added, sliding a manila folder across the table. "Your contributions have been valuable, but we're consolidating the research division under the product development team." I nodded slowly and accepted the folder without opening it. I already knew what was inside. The usual severance package, 2 weeks of pay for every year of service, 3 months of continued health coverage, and a list of career counseling resources I had no intention of using. "I completely understand," I said, keeping my voice steady. "These decisions are never easy." Relief spread across their faces. They had clearly expected tears, maybe anger. After all, I was a 55-year-old woman being quietly pushed out of a tech company that valued youth more than experience. But they didn't realize I had seen this coming weeks ago, ever since a misdirected email thread landed in my inbox. "We'd like you to clear out your desk by Friday," Marjorie continued, now sounding more confident. "We'll need your keycard, company laptop, and phone before you leave. Your team will be notified this afternoon." My team. 6 brilliant engineers I had personally hired and mentored. Together, we had developed the distributed processing algorithm that powered TechVantage's flagship product, AccountSphere, the accounting software now used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. "Of course," I replied, standing up. "Is there anything else?" They exchanged a quick glance, surprised by my calm. Marjorie regained her composure first. "That's all for now. Thank you for keeping this professional." As I walked back to my office, I passed the glass-walled conference room where the executive team was gathered. Through the clear glass, I saw CEO Victor Lawson animatedly pointing at a PowerPoint slide titled Q3 Revenue Projections. The same Victor Lawson who, at last year's industry conference, had taken full credit for my algorithm, referring to me only as one of our research team members. I closed my office door, picked up my personal phone, and sent a single text. "It's happening." Friday is my last day. The reply came almost instantly. Perfect timing. "Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details." A small smile spread across my face as I glanced at the calendar on my desk. Today was Wednesday. Friday would be my last day at TechVantage. And Monday was going to be interesting. That evening, I met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, an upscale restaurant far from TechVantage's headquarters. Gregory, the CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's biggest competitor, valued privacy as much as I did. He had reserved a private alcove tucked behind elegant Japanese screens, hidden from curious eyes. "They actually went through with it," Greg said, shaking his head once we'd ordered. I had a feeling they might. But to fire the very person who built their core technology? That's short-sighted, even for them, I smiled faintly. "Victor never really understood what I created," I replied, sipping my water. "He saw the implementation, the user interface, the marketing angle, but the real structure underneath? That was just tech jargon to him." The irony wasn't lost on me. Just 3 months ago, I had discovered that TechVantage's legal team had never filed the patent application for my distributed processing algorithm. When I confronted them, they brushed it off as an oversight and promised to take care of it immediately. But something about their tone didn't sit right with me, so I started digging. I went through the company's internal documentation, and that's where I found it. A strategy memo outlining their plan to claim my algorithm as a company-developed technology. Without listing any specific inventor, their plan was simple and ruthless: push me out before securing the patent. They knew that any intellectual property created by an employee during their tenure usually belongs to the company. What TechVantage didn't realize was that I had already been working on a refined version of the algorithm on my own, at home using my personal equipment. The updated design boosted processing efficiency by 43%, and because it was done entirely on my own time, It wasn't covered by my employment contract. I had quietly filed a patent under my own name last month, complete with detailed documentation, timestamps, and development logs proving it was independent work. The patent went through surprisingly fast, thanks to Greg's introduction to a top-tier intellectual property attorney. All the paperwork's finalized, Greg said now, sliding a folder across the table toward me. Once you sign, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. The press release goes out Monday morning, announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. I opened the folder and went through the documents carefully, though I already knew every word by heart. The terms were generous: a 7-figure signing bonus, a solid equity stake in Precision Systems, and ongoing royalties from every product that used my algorithm. Greg leaned back with a smirk. What do you think Victor's face will look like when he realizes what just happened? I smiled faintly. Honestly, I'm more concerned about my team, I said. They don't deserve to get caught in the fallout. Greg nodded. Already handled. We have offers ready for all 6 of them. Senior roles, substantial raises. If they're interested, they'll have a place with us. I signed the final page and closed the folder with a quiet sense of completion. One elegant move, and the balance of power shifted. I had secured my future, protected my team, and opened the door to a new beginning. To new beginnings, Greg said, raising his glass. And to knowing your own worth, I added, clinking mine against his. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur. Exit interviews, knowledge transfer meetings, and a steady stream of goodbyes. I kept my composure the entire time, even as whispers spread through the office. Administrative assistants gave me sympathetic smiles in the hallways, while junior developers nervously asked if I'd be willing to write LinkedIn recommendations before I left. I documented everything carefully. Every project, every password, every process. I wanted there to be no question that I had left things in perfect order. My decision to prepare such detailed transition notes wasn't an act of kindness. It was evidence. Proof that I had acted in good faith while the company had not. During my final exit interview on Friday afternoon, Denise from HR flipped through her checklist with mechanical precision. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of TechVantage, she said, sliding a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied smoothly. Anything created within the scope of my employment, using company resources, during company time. I gave those words just a slight emphasis, but Denise was too focused on her forms to notice. And you confirm that you have no copies of proprietary company information? She asked. I've taken nothing that belongs to TechVantage, I answered truthfully. The patent, after all, was entirely mine. When I returned to my office, I began packing my personal items, family photos, a stack of conference badges marking 15 years of industry events, and the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas. Marjorie stopped by, leaning against the doorframe with forced casualness. I just wanted to make sure everything's clear for your departure, she said, watching as I placed my things neatly into a cardboard box. Crystal clear, I replied, carefully wrapping a small award, the one I'd received for developing the very algorithm now central to my next chapter. The irony wasn't lost on me. You know, Kira, these restructuring decisions are never personal, Marjorie continued. Victor just feels the company needs to move in a more youthful direction. I met her gaze directly. I understand completely. Business is business. Something in my tone made her pause. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across her face, but then it vanished. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly do, after all? Will you be taking some time off? She asked, with a hint of artificial concern. Actually, I already have something lined up, I said. I start Monday. Surprise flashed across her face. That's quick. Anything interesting? Very, I replied with a small smile. A leadership position. I'm quite excited about it. She nodded absently, already moving on in her mind. Well, good luck with that. As I walked out of TechVantage's glass headquarters for the final time, keycard turned in, belongings in hand, I paused to look back. 15 years of my career had been spent inside those walls. On the top floor, the executive conference room glowed with light. They were probably already discussing how to redistribute my workload among younger, cheaper staff. What they didn't know was that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be hosting an emergency crisis meeting. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a new charcoal suit, a quiet statement of intent, and waited as Precision Systems' town car arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. to take me to headquarters. Today was my first day as Chief Innovation Officer. The press release went live at 7 a.m., Greg said as I settled into my new corner office, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Industry newsletters are already picking it up. Our communications team is tracking the reactions. The announcement had been crafted with surgical precision. Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary processing algorithm. Welcomes creator Dr. Kira Jennings as Chief Innovation Officer. It highlighted my background, clearly naming me as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and outlined how Precision Systems plan to integrate the algorithm into their next generation of products. Most importantly, it stated that any company currently using the technology would now need to negotiate new licensing agreements with Precision Systems. At exactly 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with the first text from my former team at TechVantage, Miguel. Complete chaos here. What did you do? I smiled, leaning back in my chair. The day was only just beginning. I smiled as I typed my reply. Check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers waiting. Meanwhile, about 8 miles away at TechVantage headquarters, the usual Monday morning executive meeting was turning into chaos. Thanks to Miguel's steady stream of updates, I had a front row seat to the drama. Apparently, Victor had arrived to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting outside his office door, both of them pale and tense. The industry announcement had hit their inboxes simultaneously, triggering instant panic. By 9:30 a.m., what was supposed to be a standard weekly meeting had devolved into a full-blown crisis session. Board members were dialing in remotely. The legal department was frantically combing through my employment contract, and every document related to the algorithm's development was being pulled for review. They're going through every file with your name on it, Miguel texted. Someone just wheeled in the servers from the research division so the tech team can analyze them. I could picture it all vividly. Victor pacing the conference room, snapping at Marjorie, demanding answers from the legal department. And the stock? It would already be reacting. Investors hate uncertainty, and my announcement had created plenty of it. At 10:45 a.m., an email from Victor appeared in my inbox. Short, urgent, and radiating desperation. Kira, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss. Victor, I didn't bother replying. I simply forwarded the message to Precision Systems' legal team and left it at that. By noon, the industry was buzzing. Analysts were calling it a strategic coup, and the financial effects were already showing. TechVantage's stock had dropped 7% since the market opened, while Precision Systems had climbed 12%. 3 different technology journals had already reached out, requesting interviews with me about the move that had shaken the accounting software world. Greg stopped by my office, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. How are you feeling? He asked. Validated, I said honestly. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, being told I should just be grateful to have a seat at the table. And now, finally, real recognition. Just then, my new executive assistant appeared at the door. Dr. Jennings, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room, she said, then hesitated. Also, TechVantage's CEO has called 4 times in the last hour. I smiled faintly, gathering my notes. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day, I replied calmly. I'll have our legal team reach out later this week to discuss licensing options. As I walked toward my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Miguel. Board just called an emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. P.S. My team and I accept your offer. When can we start? By Tuesday morning, the full impact of my departure had hit TechVantage like a storm. Their flagship product, AccountSphere, relied entirely on my algorithm to handle the massive data sets that gave it an edge over competitors. Now, without the rights to my patent, they face two impossible choices: negotiate with Precision Systems or rebuild their entire core technology from scratch. Either option meant years of work and millions in development costs. At 2 p.m., Miguel texted again. Victor just called an all-hands meeting. It was his last day at TechVantage. He and the rest of my former team would be joining Precision Systems the following Monday. Rumor is they're going to try to sue you, Miguel added. I forwarded the message to our legal department. Their reply came almost immediately. Let them try. Your documentation is flawless. Development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage, everything is airtight. We've prepared for this. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new position with surprising ease. The atmosphere at Precision Systems was entirely different. Here, when I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. My ideas weren't repackaged by others and presented as their own. My age and experience weren't seen as liabilities. They were strengths. During our afternoon briefing, Greg appeared at my door. The engineering team is implementing your efficiency improvements, he said. Early testing shows a 51% performance boost, even better than we projected. I had several refinements I never shared with TechVantage, I admitted. Once I realized they planned to cut my position, I saw no reason to give them my best work. Greg smiled, clearly pleased. Their loss, our gain, he said. Speaking of which, the first licensing inquiry came in this morning. Not from TechVantage yet, they're still in denial, but from Dataflow Systems. They're worried about getting caught in the crossfire. At 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent a detailed summary of Victor's all-hands meeting. According to him, Victor had tried to appear confident, insisting the company would vigorously defend its proprietary technology. But the anxiety in the room had been unmistakable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Marjorie looked like she might faint, Miguel reported. Someone asked directly if they failed to secure the patent. Victor ended the Q&A right after that. By Wednesday, the fallout had only intensified. Two major clients had already reached out to Precision Systems about switching from AccountSphere, worried about TechVantage's ability to maintain the product without its creator. Our stock had risen another 8%, while TechVantage's continued its decline. That afternoon, I received a call from Denise, the same HR representative who had handed me my severance folder just days earlier. Kira, she began, her voice carefully professional, I'm calling about the, situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights. I don't think there's any misunderstanding, I replied evenly. My employment agreement clearly states that any intellectual property developed on my own time, using my own resources, belongs to me. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Victor was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options, she said hesitantly. Any discussions will need to go through Precision Systems legal department, I told her. I'm sure they'd be happy to arrange a meeting to discuss licensing terms. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Finally, Denise sighed. I'll pass that along. That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to Precision Systems Board of Directors, outlining our new technology roadmap, with my algorithm at its core. As I stood confidently at the head of the table, no longer hidden in the background as I had been at TechVantage, I caught Greg's approving nod from across the room. By Friday, exactly 1 week after I had walked out of TechVantage for the last time, the company was in full-blown crisis mode. Their stock had dropped 23% since Monday's opening bell, prompting alarmed calls from major investors. Industry analysts were already publishing headlines like, Can TechVantage survive the algorithm crisis? And how one strategic blunder may cost a tech giant everything. Through my industry contacts, I knew this was only the beginning. By the end of the week, I learned that Victor had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. TechVantage faced two choices, both disastrous. Either license my algorithm from Precision Systems at rates that would gut their profit margins, or attempt a full rebuild of AccountSphere without touching any technology covered by my patent. They've started interviewing for a new development team, Miguel told me during our Friday video call, as we discussed his upcoming transition to Precision Systems. Victor's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm took me 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. Exactly, Miguel said. Nobody believes the timeline, especially after your old team posted their resignation letters all at once. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, TechVantage's attorneys finally reached out to Precision Systems to open formal discussions about potential licensing arrangements. Our legal team, following the carefully planned strategy, responded with terms that were technically fair, but strategically devastating. 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement naming me as the technology's inventor. They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost, Greg predicted as we reviewed the response together in his office. Victor's ego won't let him admit he forced out the person who created their core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild, I said simply. And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we widen our lead. The following Monday morning, 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led my first meeting with my newly assembled innovation team, Miguel and the other 5 engineers who had left TechVantage to join me. The energy in the room was electric. Whiteboards filled quickly with equations, flow diagrams, and notes about the next evolution of the algorithm. This, said Anita, one of my former colleagues, leaning back in her chair with a grin, is how development meetings should be. At TechVantage, we spent half our time explaining basic concepts to executives who never listened anyway. That's the difference between being valued and being replaceable, I replied. Here, your expertise actually matters. As we wrapped up the session, my assistant appeared at the door, slightly breathless. Dr. Jennings, there's been a significant development with TechVantage. Their board just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson is stepping down, effective immediately. The news spread fast. Within hours, industry publications were reporting that TechVantage's board had lost confidence in Victor's leadership following the patent debacle that crippled their flagship product. Marjorie Thompson was out as well, along with the head of legal, both dismissed for failing to secure the patent that started it all. That evening, as I was reviewing system test results, a new email appeared in my inbox. This one from Richard Donovan, TechVantage's newly appointed interim CEO. Unlike Victor's desperate messages from the week before, Richard's tone was professional and measured. Dr. Jennings, congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help TechVantage navigate the current situation. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We're prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for the oversights of previous management. Would you be available to meet next week? Richard Donovan, interim CEO, TechVantage. I forwarded the email to Greg, adding only 2 words. Phase 1 complete. His reply came seconds later. Beautifully executed. The board is celebrating your first major victory for Precision Systems, Greg said with a proud grin. Looks like TechVantage is finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and the people who create it. 3 months after leaving TechVantage, I found myself sitting on stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The audience was packed with industry leaders, journalists, and young developers, many of whom already knew my story. And now, the conference organizer announced, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling across multiple industries. Applause filled the auditorium as I approached the podium. I couldn't help but think how much had changed in just a few months. Last year, I had attended this same conference as part of the Tech Vantage delegation, quietly seated in the back row while Victor stood on stage, taking credit for his company's innovations. "Thank you," I began, scanning the faces before me. "Today, I want to talk about innovation, ownership, and the importance of valuing intellectual contributions, no matter where they come from." My talk covered both the technical breakthroughs behind my algorithm and the broader issues of recognition and respect within the tech world. Without naming TechVantage, I made my point clear. Companies must protect their innovators, not treat them as interchangeable resources. Afterward, during the reception, several young women engineers approached me to talk. One of them, barely 30, spoke quietly but confidently. "Your story changed how I document my work," she said. "I've started keeping detailed personal logs of every idea and project I develop on my own time." I smiled. "Smart move," I told her. "Your innovations deserve protection. Never let anyone make you feel disposable." Later that evening, I glanced at my phone and saw an industry news alert. TechVantage had officially announced a licensing agreement with Precision Systems, publicly acknowledging me by name as the algorithm's creator. Their stock had finally stabilized, though still far below its value before my departure. Exactly 1 year after being told to clear out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Precision Systems reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products, each built on my algorithm, capturing a major share of the market that TechVantage once dominated. A knock at my door pulled me from my analysis. It was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the glasses down. "The board asked me to share the news with you personally." Before the public announcement, Precision Systems has officially surpassed TechVantage in market valuation for the first time in company history. I smiled, not out of triumph, but quiet satisfaction. That's what happens when innovation is valued properly. As Greg poured the champagne, my assistant entered, handing me a sleek envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at Women in Technology's annual Leadership Summit. The topic: Owning Your Intellectual Value, How Proper Documentation Changed an Industry. Greg raised an eyebrow, smiling. "You've become something of an icon, you know." The story about the executive who didn't recognize what she had until it was gone, that's now a case study in corporate boardrooms. He was right. Richard Donovan, who had stayed on as TechVantage's CEO after the crisis, had implemented sweeping new policies around intellectual property protection and inventor recognition, policies modeled after the very program I'd built at Precision Systems. "It was never about revenge," I said, lifting my glass in a toast. "It was about recognition. About proving that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from real people who deserve real credit." "To proper recognition," Greg agreed, clinking his glass against mine. As the afternoon sunlight spilled across my office, I thought back over the long journey that had brought me here. At 56, I had finally found what I'd been searching for all along. Not just success, but acknowledgement. My name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had transformed an entire industry, exactly where it always belonged.